They say ignorance is bliss, but as a lifelong journalist, I really couldn't disagree more. If there's something shocking to know, I want to know about it, and I want you to know about it too. I'm Peggy Bunker, and I can't wait for you to know it all. This season's focus, do we even know what we're eating? The truth about factory farming. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. I'm Peggy Bunker. And I'm super excited to introduce this guest to you, Cassie King from Direct Action Everywhere. And I was just chatting with her about today's interview. And we were talking about why is it that some people, say you're on your lunch break and you're walking to get lunch with your colleagues and you notice a dog in a really hot car, windows cracked this much. We've all seen people do that. I've actually waited by a car where somebody did that, waited for them to get back from lunch. It did not go well, but dogs heat up so quickly in a car, and many of us would get involved and help save the dog. What if it wasn't a dog? What if it was a pig? What if it was a small cow? What if it was a sheep? Why is it that we feel the need to help save dogs or other animals like that, but it's okay to let large numbers of farm animals suffer in this way? We're going to talk to Cassie King today about this exact issue and also the right to rescue farm animals. Cassie's worked for Direct Action Everywhere for years, and it is her advocacy that is raising the legal point. Should people who are raising animals for food, especially corporations, be allowed to torture them? And currently, Cassie is facing trial over this exact issue after rescuing 2 chickens from a large corporate poultry farm. So she certainly is the expert in this space and very excited to share a conversation with you. Here's Cassie King. Cassie King from DXE, otherwise known as Direct Action Everywhere, an amazing organization that is doing so much for animals. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Peggy. Thanks for diving into these issues that people know way too little about.
I 100% agree. And tell me how you got into it. Just give me a little bit of your background, like when you first knew that this was going to be something that you were going to dedicate your life to.
Well, I was really lucky that I came to college at UC Berkeley. And at that time in my life, when I was learning so much, I saw that there was a big animal rights scene in Berkeley. I learned so much from my roommate and from the campus animal rights club, and ultimately got connected from them to Direct Action Everywhere. So I started volunteering as a student and got plugged in right after graduating as the communications lead.
And how many years has it been?
I've been leading communications for 7 years, so the time is flying.
And has it made you more dedicated to animals, more despondent about the state of how we treat animals in our society, especially the ones raised for food, or do you feel like things are getting better?
Both. Definitely, there are signs for hope every day. I think doing the work and doing activism is what gives me the hope, because I see so many people who are also putting in countless hours and sacrificing to make change for animals. And I draw hope from the community that I'm working in. But certainly there are also, unfortunately, setbacks all the time, whether that's in the political climate that we're living in or just with natural disasters and things happening that are heartbreaking and in how they impact animals, including humans, but also so many animals who don't necessarily get their stories told.
Absolutely. And we'll talk a bit more about Berkeley, because Berkeley's been such a foundational component of change in terms of animal activism, new laws being on the books. So Berkeley actually has played a pivotal role. We'll circle back to that. So as a kid, just to go back to and when you were first growing up, did you grow up even thinking about what you were eating? Are you vegetarian? Do you eat meat? Is it more like animal concern? Because I think you can be an animal activist. Some people disagree and just oppose the way that animals raised for food are treated. Some people say you should be able to eat whatever you want to eat, but you shouldn't be able to torture an animal in order to get your burger type of thing. Mm-hmm. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I have gone vegan, and I totally understand that the movement has unfortunately framed the animal rights issues that we're addressing around diet and personal choice in a way that just pushes people away. I mean, obviously, with other social justice issues, we know that we need to change the laws. We need to fight racism on a systemic level. It's important that people learn and grow. That's part of changing systems, but that's not enough. So I'm really happy to be in a role where we are focused on system change, changing laws for animals, using court cases as previous social justice movements have done to really create revolutionary change for animal rights, and not just trying to get people one at a time to make sometimes very difficult changes depending on their circumstances, while more people are being born. And, I think that's just a less effective strategy, frankly. So I'm happy to be working on changes that I think all people can plug into.
100%. And the first part is just educating people. I mean, I think so much comes from people just not understanding or knowing, what is going on behind the scenes. And there's very well-funded ag lobbies that are making sure that's the case, that you don't see how your chicken is raised, your rotisserie chicken, your hamburger, your pork, et cetera. They don't want you to see that. So that's why the work that you do and so many others is so critically important, because not only, especially right now in the case of the bird flu, it does affect people's health and it does affect our environment. It is a significant effect. So let's dive right in and talk about that. So tell us a little bit about specifically the work that DXC does. Is it mostly going after legal policies, or I know there's right to rescue components, just if you can summarize.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a whole movement ecology within the animal rights movement. There are people working on personal transformation, working on alternatives to the current violent system of factory farming and animal agriculture. And in DXC, we're focused on trying to change the system, which within that, there's inside game, people trying to change the system from within it. And then we're very much trying to change the system from outside it, which means applying a lot of pressure. So we do a whole host of tactics to apply pressure to create change. Some of that is very focused on the industry itself and protesting factory farms, exposing them through undercover investigations, getting media attention, and public exposure that really puts pressure on these businesses to change or to get out of town. Frankly, we don't want factory farms and slaughterhouses here in California, and I hope we'll be one of the first places to really get rid of them. But we also are building community, and that is a super important part of our theory of change, because to put pressure on a system from the outside, we need people. Whether it's lobbying and trying to pass legislation, well, you need people to show up and talk to their legislators in every city and to pack the courtrooms or the legislative buildings and do public comment and protest and march through the streets and all these things. So we're really focused on mobilizing people and exerting pressure on the systems that can create change. We're trying to build activists.
That's amazing. And why? Well, first of all, it's hard to do, though, right? If people don't, especially people who don't want their food taken away, or I think there's also a component of guilt. People have guilty pleasures about eating something that they know obviously came from an animal product. They don't want to think about it. Like, the number one thing, me being in this space, that I hear is, I don't want to know. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. But that is fundamental to making the change. It's making sure people know where their food is coming from, and also that there are alternatives, either more humane alternatives or plant-based alternatives. But how do you pull people in to actually make this something they want to spend their time on and think about?
I think that willful ignorance is definitely a challenge we're up against when there are so many issues and so many things pulling at people's heartstrings and asking for their time. And fortunately, with animal rights, we are able to change systems that impact not just millions and millions of animals, but also the farm workers who are at risk in these very dangerous jobs, who are being overlooked, as well as the environment that is being degraded, as well as public health, which you mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about more with avian flu and other diseases that are brewing inside these overcrowded and unsanitary close confinement environments of animals. So I really feel that by focusing on animal issues, we're actually able to achieve so much at once that it's really a fertile ground for just creating revolutionary change in many different facets of our life that need change desperately. And so I think it gives people actually a lot of accomplishment and a sense of purpose to be working on something that is in the the service of the public and the greater good of everyone. Our health is connected, our planet is connected. To be part of that change and having that purpose is really a gift to me. So, I hope that people can get past the truly sad and difficult parts of learning about atrocities that are happening that you haven't been told about before, to get to the part where you're actually helping protect animals and the planet. And that feels so good.
And so much of it, too, I have found as a journalist, I could never get like an animal abuse story on like, okay, I'm going to pitch this story. They just found out that all of these animals got gassed at this place. They didn't follow the protocol of how to do away with their fleet of 400,000 chickens and what have you. It could never be that story because people are so offended by looking at the images or looking at the reality of how their food is raised. I would usually have to reconfigure it into like a health food issue. Like I did an egg story once and I had to pitch it as a salmonella danger. The dangers of salmonella are higher if it comes from a factory egg versus, say, a free-range operation or a cage-free operation. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating that there is a lot of restriction in terms of the truth and telling people the truth, which is why it's so wonderful now to be able to ask you these questions. And you think, what did you call it? Willful ignorance or willful? Willful. Yeah. Tell me about that. Willful ignorance.
Well, I think that's the same thing that's happening sometimes in the media or in other places where people are people and they don't like to see things that are too personally upsetting or maybe that go against a worldview that they already have. And since it's so ingrained into society to view animals as products because they show up as ingredients in not just food, but parts of their bodies that are turned into beauty products and turned into clothing. And everywhere that we go, we encounter animals more often as products than as beings. So it's so deeply ingrained to kind of just push away the idea that they're beings who deserve rights and deserve to have their own stories told, because it really calls into question so much else that we're doing in our day-to-day lives because we're kept in the dark. Because it's fed to us.
And the images that we don't want to see are kept from us. Let's talk about the bird flu, which, of course, everybody's been affected by that, mostly just because they can't find eggs. And there's no correlation, I find, when I hear fellow moms or people, complain, oh, my gosh, there's no eggs, or do you have any eggs? There's no understanding of why that is. And having been to different farms and going to different sheds that have 200, 300,000 birds stacked on top of each other, which is how it was before California said no more battery cages. They don't understand that living animals living on top of each other, defecating, eating, et cetera, on top of each other, by the end of that 2-year period that they keep a chicken in a cage, how unsanitary that environment is. And from what I understand, sometimes they go in as chicks and nobody goes in again. It's all automated. There's no farming. There's no farmer in there. Is that your understanding as well?
Definitely the food and water are automated in many of these industrial factory farms, and the feces is handled automatically as well in a lot of cases where it's literally going through cracks in the flooring to feed into a giant manure lagoon. It depends on the kind of facility. It's very different than what people imagine is happening when they think about the farming that they saw in children's books growing up and animals grazing outside, and images they continue to see on packaging of products in the store. So, there are a lot of reasons people aren't finding out about where this avian flu is coming from, why it's spreading so rapidly. And then the media is also often failing to report on the actual animal side of things. It's a lot of what you see at the grocery store or what you don't see at the grocery store. But over 160 million commercial birds have been killed in the US because of avian flu since 2022. 160 million, and that's just commercial birds. There's millions more wild birds and many other species, marine mammals and other animals who are dying from this flu. And we keep things so human-centric. It's all about the price of the eggs.
I know. It's crazy. I see these things on the TV. I'm like, how are they not talking about the source of this and the way that we are and the impact this is having on other people's health? And now it's jumping species, and the workers, and et cetera. But I agree. All they're talking about is the cost of the eggs and not the fact that we've killed millions and millions of birds.
And they want to tell us, oh, the risk of transmission to humans is still low, so don't worry. And it's like, when are we allowed to worry? Are we going to wait until it has mutated to spread from human to human and we have another pandemic on our hands to then be like, okay, we're allowed to worry now? No, we need to address the root cause. We need to address factory farming now. This should be a wake-up call.
It should be a wake-up call when that many animals are killed. And when we say killed the birds, do people even understand what that means? From my understanding, it's just like a mass gas incident. They gas the shed. The birds are all kept in a big, giant warehouse. Think of like a giant shed, sometimes, hundreds of thousands of birds. And from what I understand, they just gas the birds to kill the flock. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a few different methods that they use, but yep, it's not pretty. They are already in sheds, so they basically seal them up, and they sometimes use like a water-based foam that fills the shed and basically drowns the birds. They also sometimes use something called ventilation shutdown, which, just like it sounds, is sealing off the vents that normally do create some ventilation, some airflow in these sheds they live in. And now with no airflow, they raise the temperature and they're basically roasted to death, dying from overheating.
And that's what some of the bigger manufacturers I've read are getting in trouble for. I have seen some cases where they're not supposed to do that because they also do this with pigs occasionally, right?
Right. It's legal to use, but it's only recommended in extreme circumstances. But the unfortunate thing is now we're seeing extreme circumstances frequently because avian flu is spreading all over the country, all over the world. And we've also seen it with the COVID-19 pandemic where slaughterhouses had to shut down because workers in close proximity there were getting COVID. And so with slaughterhouse shutdowns, factory farms had too many animals on their hands that they couldn't send to slaughter, and they were killing them with ventilation shutdown then in 2020. So it's supposed to be reserved for extreme circumstances, but you see time and time again that we are allowing these worst case scenarios to come about rather than just addressing the industry that inevitably leads to nightmares like this.
Right, because it will happen again. This isn't the first
Absolutely.
time. This is like, how many episodes of bird flu have we now heard about? It got to be like the fifth, sixth one in
And
the
there's
past
new
decade.
strains. Yeah.
Yeah, and they just kill the birds. There's no medical attention for any of these birds. They go into the shed when they're chicks. They're all female because they lay eggs. Newsflash. Some people don't realize that. They're all female. They are not cared for. Nobody touches them again, right? Until they're gassed.
I mean, the farms will make all kinds of different claims, but as someone who has reviewed many hours of footage from factory farms, including from hidden cameras that DXC investigators have placed and documented, all we see is the occasional worker, walking through, looking for dead animals, basically, because they are supposed to remove dead animals. But often investigators find dead, rotting animals left inside the facility among the living animals, which again is a big public health risk there. They're all on top of each other. So yeah, it's very automated. It's very minimal actual individual attention to the animals. And you can understand why, because these animals aren't worth that much money to the industry. So if they become ill and they need medical treatment, I mean, think about how much it costs to provide veterinary care for your dog or your cat. Or I have rats. It's hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars. They're not going to invest that money into a chicken. Killing them is the more profitable thing to do.
And loading them up with antibiotics. I mean, don't they just eat nonstop antibiotics, which we then eat?
Mm-hmm. More antibiotics are fed to animals, farmed animals, than humans by a large margin. And people don't realize that.
What is the USDA doing? I mean, when people think about these systems, they think, okay, well, we have government agencies, government policies that prevent this sort of thing. And that's, I think, someplace that people park their consolation in their head is, oh, there's government agencies that are taking care of this. But that's not true.
I was one of those people. I used to think that and have a lot of trust that, well, all these different agencies exist. So, somebody must really be on top of it. And actually, the fact that there are so many agencies that are tasked in some way with overseeing animal agriculture, it leads to a lot of diffusion of responsibility where the USDA and the CDFA, the California Department of Food and Ag, and the Public Health Department in California and other groups are all saying, oh, that's their problem. Oh, they should deal with that. When we've documented criminal animal cruelty and we've reported it to the authorities, they all say, this isn't our job. So whose job is it? Everybody wants to pass it to someone else because it's such a huge amount of work to take on if you were to actually hold factory farms accountable to the laws, to protecting animals and to food safety. There's so much flying under the radar that it would be a huge undertaking. And the USDA in particular, people think they're holding the industry accountable. I see it as them serving the industry. And many people come graduating into the USDA from working as executives in the animal agriculture industry. It's kind of a cycle, and they're existing to continue and maintain the animal agriculture industry and put their interests first.
One thing that you mentioned to me that I couldn't believe, but you said that actually the USDA, the lobbyists that serve the USDA are better funded than big oil.
Big agriculture. Big agriculture is spending more money lobbying than big oil. And of course, it's politicians on both sides of the aisle. So, whoever is elected, things change, but the animals inevitably suffer. Nobody is focused on protecting these animals. There's so much money in politics from animal agriculture
that they're trying to protect their profits. So let's try to think about some positives. How is California, because you just feel so despondent, you feel like giving up. But that's part of the reason why we're talking about this, is really the consumer also drives change. I know that so many people prefer now to get organic. Not many people did organic until the consumer demand was there. So sometimes, people don't think that you can be a single person or a single community driving the change, but that's exactly what you guys have discovered, that it's small efforts by individuals, groups, small cities, that is the change driver.
Yeah, and change happens very quickly. I know it feels too slow, of course, when you're in it, but when you look back in history, change happens in sudden bursts and very quickly. And even factory farming came about in the past few hundred years. So we've seen our food system change hugely, and we can change it again. And we know all the reasons to do that. And people are working on this. And in California, we have seen some promising progress. So California is the first state and the first state in the country to ban fur farming and the sale of fur.
Thank God. Thank God for that. I mean, it's so disgusting. Every time I see somebody wearing a fur now, I'm just like, what era are you from? I mean, I don't understand how people can still, it's so disgusting. I don't get it. But
you just see the animal. It just
repulses me. But anyway, so it's illegal in California now to sell fur. That started in Berkeley, and then tell me how that progressed.
Yeah, so it started with a few cities passing fur bans: West Hollywood, Berkeley, which Direct Action Everywhere, we were working on that one. And then also San Francisco, we were able to lead San Francisco, becoming, the largest city in California to ban fur sales. And Los Angeles did as well. So you had West Hollywood, Berkeley, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and from there, the state. And that's because what starts locally really can spread massively when it's first of all, it's setting a precedent. You're no longer the first to do it. Once somebody goes out on a limb and passes the law for the first time, then every subsequent legislative effort has a law to cite. They can present to their colleagues and their lawyers and the public, well, so-and-so has already done this. So it makes it that much easier. And that's what we saw happen with the state.
With the fur ban. And I love that people just realize that just one person says we're not going to do this. And there's so many brands now that have gone completely fur-free. I know Neiman Marcus, No Fur, Keurig brand that's like, Gucci. And I think there's only like Louis Vuitton, Fendi, these luxury brands that still do fur. And I will not support those brands. I don't touch anything that they make. I used to have an old Louis Vuitton bag. I gave it away. There's many, many more brands, obviously Stella McCartney and all that luxury brands that are saying no to fur. And I was very happy to see Neiman Marcus follow suit and do the same thing. And that started in California. So with factory farming, Berkeley, once again, is doing the same thing. They just outlawed factory farming in that city, once again, establishing a precedent for other cities to grab a hold of. What exactly constitutes a factory farm?
That's a great question because, working on that ballot measure last year in Berkeley, we got that question a lot. Factory farms in Berkeley, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to vote yes on this ballot measure? And the ballot measure used the EPA's definition for a factory farm, which they call a concentrated animal feeding operation, or CAFO. And it's really based on the number of animals confined in a facility that have food brought into them. It's a concentrated animal feeding operation. And the EPA definition includes horses in that. So a facility with 500 or more horses is a horse CAFO. And there was a horse CAFO in Berkeley, which was the Golden Gate Fields horse racing track that stabled over 1,000 horses at a time to be brought out just for training and racing. Really no good life for these horses who want to be roaming free. And the public was very opposed to it. There were regular protests every time a horse would die at the track. And eventually, residents got this on the ballot, and Golden Gate Fields actually saw the writing on the wall, and they chose to shut down. So they shut down their operation before the measure even went to a vote last November. But fortunately, it did pass, and now we have this symbolic win as well that can set a precedent for other cities.
And I think the number one thing, too, which that's wonderful. That's amazing they did that. I just think anybody who understands putting 1,000 animals, especially a large animal like a horse or a pig or cow, in any environment, you've got the waste. You've got all the output of waste. And so why would anybody want that in their community? Most of these factory farm horses, pigs, any of that, where is it going? I mean, you've got the fecal matter, the urine. That's got to be, it's such a detriment to the water supply.
Exactly. I mean, there were tests of showing high coliform counts in the bay. This facility is in the marina right by our beautiful bay. You have to ask, where is all that waste going? And that is actually why it's the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, that developed the CAFO definition as part of the Clean Water Act, because that's their purview. They weren't looking at it from an animal welfare perspective directly, although that's very related. They were looking at just the mass amounts of concentrated animal waste that are produced by these facilities.
Good. Well, obviously, which is what everybody should be thinking about. And then also, if you're raising an animal like that and then eating an animal that's raised like that, what are you putting into your body? I mean, I think that's the part that is kept from people, is what's actually going into your food. What are you feeding your kids? How much hormone and antibiotic, and then antibiotic resistance becomes an issue. How much of this are you willing to tolerate and buy and purchase to bring home to your family to eat, knowing that it's pumped full of antibiotics because it was raised in a shed with, hundreds of thousands of other animals? What can shoppers, moms, restaurants, people who are waking up to where these products are coming from, what can they do to make change? If one or two people, if small communities can make a change, what can we do to support the right kind of animal products, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, that's a really difficult question, because I have seen so many different labels: humane, free range, cage free, sustainable, local, and then seen the reality of what those facilities look like and seen it be far from what's advertised time and time again. So, I mean, it's really difficult to trust what you're seeing. That's something that I have struggled with, feeling trust in this world after seeing the audacity to call some of the most cruel conditions humane. I do think that, going to see these farms, going to farmers markets and actually meeting these animals is a plus, because most places you will find in your endeavor to do this won't let you come, won't show you the animals. Yeah. And, that's very telling why they'll only show you the package.
Very true. They'll show you the parts, having been to a couple different egg farms, a couple different dairy farms. They'll show you like their organic operation, or they'll show you their free range operation. But then you see these like barns, sheds down the way, and you're like, what about those? And they're never going to let you in there.
They actually have a show farm. Yeah, they actually have one sometimes that they will show to people that looks completely different from the others. We've seen this with a Whole Foods turkey supplier that DXC investigated, where, yeah, they have one show farm, but when investigators went to the other facilities, they were sick and crowded and filthy, ammonia-ridden, terrible-smelling sheds. And that's the reality.
Is that the Distal Farm one? I want to do that next. Let's do that before Thanksgiving. Was it Distal?
Yeah.
Okay. It's so, disgusting. Back to California real quick. So is there anything that we should definitely stop supporting? Or you said, I know it's hard to tell when you're looking at labels, but in terms of like an action item, what would you say, or what does DXC tell people they can do if they see this, they see the B-roll that comes along with this of people who've gone undercover, which And actually, let me ask you this first. That is something that your organization does, and in fact, you've had people be prosecuted for going undercover to expose these conditions and these health concerns for the general public. You guys are putting your own freedom, safety, businesses on the line to put a camera on, go into some of these farms, which they won't let you in otherwise, and expose what's really going on there. And tell me what's happened to a couple of your colleagues for doing that.
Yeah, so we've had investigators document violations of California's animal cruelty statute 597 and report it to law enforcement. And then they themselves are the ones who are prosecuted for bringing this forward. And we've had investigators go on trial and in some cases actually be acquitted by the jury for documenting conditions and rescuing animals from abuse, which is groundbreaking. Court cases are one way that we change the laws of society. So to have that precedent in court is really promising. But we've also had an investigator be convicted and serve jail time for their involvement in animal operations. So, demonstrations going into facilities to protect animals.
And this is called right to rescue, which just in layperson's terms, explain to us right to rescue. If you see an animal in distress, if you see an animal that is suffering or injured or like actively suffering, your DXE feels, and I think any normal society with a brain in their head would agree, you should help that animal. And the only reason we seem to accept this is because it's a factory farm for food that we're going to eat, that people overlook it. If it were a dog, people would be losing their minds. It would be on the evening news, et cetera, et cetera. Not the case with even a large animal like a cow or a pig or a chicken.
Right. And so much so that when it comes to dogs, many states have actually passed Good Samaritan laws, or in California, it's called the Right to Rescue Act. So they're literally using this language that you have the right to rescue animals. But many states have passed these with specific regard to dogs inside vehicles when it's a hot day and you notice a dog trapped inside a vehicle and you think they could be at risk of overheating and dying. And that's great that so many states have passed laws to basically ensure that you have civil and criminal immunity if you break a car window, if you take action to rescue those animals. But exactly, when it comes to a chicken who is dying on the floor of a factory farm or a pig who is in need of emergency medical care, rescuing them and taking them to get medical care is exactly the same values at play, and we think exactly the same laws. We have a legal right to rescue animals when laws that are meant to protect them are being violated. When we have documented criminal animal cruelty and we take action, we intervene to get the animals care, we believe we have the legal right to do that. And we are going on trial to defend that legal right and hopefully to set a legal precedent and open the floodgates to rescuing all these animals who are in dire need of care.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, I think that's sort of, I'm always reevaluating what side I'm on. I don't think it's ever going to work to tell everybody they can't eat meat. I don't think that's going to be a very hard, way to go. But I do think it is not okay as a society to say it's all right to torture, injure, harm, brutally murder animals that have central nervous systems, feel pain, feel anguish, have familial communities with their offspring, just like we do. Mm-hmm. How is it okay in our society that it's okay and acceptable and legal to injure them, torture them, burn them alive, boil them alive, et cetera? That's the part that I just feel like, I'm not telling anyone they can't have their hamburger or their bacon. I think that animal should have one bad day instead of being obliterated with antibiotics, living on top of each other, trapped indoors, can't move, can't stretch, can't turn around, so that people can have their bacon. And if you're eating the bacon, you should ask yourself, where is this bacon coming from? And do I support that? And if I saw it happening in front of me, would I be okay with that? I think that those are the questions that we should be asking. One of your colleagues is going to trial in May, Zoe, and she is accused of rescuing 4 chickens. So what they are charging her with is 4 counts, 4 misdemeanors, and a trespassing. Is that right?
So she's facing 1 felony conspiracy and essentially to commit the 4 misdemeanors that she's facing, which include trespass and theft. Of course, the theft that they're pointing to is her rescue of these chickens and taking them to get veterinary care. So I think a lot of the legal questioning there relies on whether that's theft or whether it's rescue, which is something that played out in our previous trials. And juries in southern Utah, of all places, and in Merced, California, actually decided it was not theft, and they acquitted animal rescuers with DXE in those two cases. So it's possible that the jury in Sonoma County will agree.
I think that's such excellent precedent. And that's the other thing. If a human being looks at what is going on and the pictures are right there in front of them, you have a very hard time when it's right in front of you and you're looking at an injured animal that has a central nervous system just like we do and saying it doesn't matter and it's okay for us to do that. It's because it's so hidden that it continues to happen. So that's happening. You guys are having a huge animal conference around the time of this trial to support Zoe, I know, but also bring attention to these issues. Tell us a little bit about the conference that's coming up in May.
So it's the Animal Liberation Conference. It's actually the largest grassroots animal rights conference in North America, and DXE has organized it consistently over the recent years. And so the 2025 Animal Liberation Conference, for the first time, we're doing it right in the midst of an animal rescue trial. And I'm really excited about this because it's an opportunity to bring hundreds of dedicated activists from across California and around the country together at this pivotal moment where animal rescue is on trial, and to show the support that there is among the public for animal rescue, to hopefully get more people in the community plugged in. And, I really do feel that these cases that boil down to such a simple question are an opportunity for people to recognize that they're already on the side of the animals. They already see animal rescue as the right thing to do, and the company that left those animals to suffer as the one committing the crime.
Right.
So it boils it down to a very simple question, and then we see that there's actually already so much public support on the side of protecting animals from abuse.
Good. God, that's good to hear, because it can make you just feel completely despondent. I as an animal person, I have, all the Instagram accounts that and it's so I try to go to bed and you're just seeing all these things and it just is crushing. But to wrap this up, you feel hope. Tell us how we also can feel hope. Do you sense that there's, a couple steps forward, couple steps back, but what's something that gives you hope in terms of this space?
Well, a specific thing is definitely the factory farm ban in Berkeley that I hope will follow a similar trajectory to the fur ban in Berkeley that helped pave the way to California, the fifth largest economy in the world. Not just it's the top economy in the US, but fifth largest in the world. It's comparable to other countries' economies saying no to fur. So I hope we can get California to say no to factory farming too. I hope that some people are waking up from the avian flu crisis. Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency, and the CDFA actually did ban showing poultry and dairy cattle at exhibits, bringing them to the fair, which those are good steps. But what are we doing about factory farming? We need to address the real root problem here that legislators are scared to tackle because of money in politics. But I have hope about that. And because people are willing to sacrifice their freedom to go on trial to expose these abuses, including public health risks, incredibly high rates of disease at Purdue's Petaluma Poultry Slaughterhouse, which is at the heart of this trial in May in Sonoma County. I think that word is getting out there. And most of all, I feel hope because I'm taking action alongside these people. Being part of a community and taking action is what gives us hope. We don't just have hope automatically. It's being involved in the change and doing the work that gives us the hope and helps us see things are changing. So my call to action would be get plugged in any way that you can.
Absolutely. And pay attention to what you're purchasing and where you're putting your dollar, because when the profits start to wane because people are waking up to what it actually is or where it comes from or what they're feeding their kids, that also packs a punch as well. But I think getting plugged in is a great call to action. Anything we can do to support Zoe coming up in May?
Yes, please add your name in support of the Right to Rescue. We have a petition at the website righttorescue.com. And every time you sign it, it's sending that email to the district attorney in Sonoma County. So they're seeing yet another person is saying, hey, you're prosecuting the wrong person here. You need to prosecute Purdue.
Exactly. And I'm sure they're lawyered up to the bejesus, right? They probably got a zillion lawyers up here to, yeah. Okay. Well, we are looking forward to participating. I'm going to be at that conference. I'm looking forward to that as well. And I've already signed that petition, and I definitely will continue to support Zoe and DXC. And then just thank you so much, Cassie, for all the work that you and your colleagues do, bringing the realities of what we're eating to the forefront. Everybody should know it all about what you're eating, what you're feeding your kids, where it comes from, and really appreciate your expertise. So thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you. And thanks everyone who's listening and learning. We all have to learn and share, spread the word.
100%. All right, Cassie, thanks so much. We'll see you in May at the trial.
Awesome.
Okay, I love these segments because everybody gets to see Courtney, our producer of Know It All, Courtney Blomquist, who's also, translation, also my therapist, who I'm like, Courtney, I can't get this done. So, Courtney, it's always fun to chat with you. And I love this idea. This was actually your idea on a lighter note, because some of these topics are pretty heavy. You've heard these interviews. They're heavy.
Yeah, for sure. It's empowering to know that there's so many people out there doing such great work, but it is heavy. It's hard to sit with the information you learn.
It is. And also, look, what do you do with that? Either you change your behavior or you just keep ignoring it, even though now you know about it. What are you going to do? So it's a lot of pressure. So, and some of these stories and interviews that we do can be a little tough. So Courtney's idea was, let's do something at the end, sort of like a palate cleanser that kind of just puts you back on the right foot in terms of having, good thoughts. And I loved this particular video that I saw. It's all about kindness. And I think for a lot of people, I'm sure you agree, you just moved from LA. Courtney just moved from LA to Minnesota, not like warm Minnesota, but you're like northern Minnesota.
I'm northern
right?
Minnesota. Yeah, it's where everything is just, I don't know, everything's all about Paul Bunyan up here. It's a culture shock in that regard.
And maple syrup, Paul Bunyan and maple syrup and wood.
Paul Bunyan and his big blue ox, and there's a lot of Paul Bunyan statues and tributes and a lot of Paul Bunyan.
Oh my God. I'm hearing road trip. Like that sounds
it is
like
kind of a good road trip destination. Yeah. They're very Americana stuff up here. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I fully think we should do a Minnesota Paul Bunyan episode.
Heck yeah.
But that you moved from LA. I used to live in LA. People there can be rough, not very kind. And this video that we came across was basically people just in their everyday lives seeing somebody that needed just a little bit of help. And for me, when things are really tough, either politics are tough, the world news is tough, the environment's tough, just being kind in your day-to-day or doing something kind for somebody else is really, really therapeutic. I don't know if you find this to be true. I found when I lived in LA, one of the hardest parts of living there was people just weren't very nice. Like people would take my parking space or cut in line, or I always felt that way in LA. And oddly, when I moved to New York, I stopped feeling that way. I thought New Yorkers were very nice. But are you sensing this difference from LA to Minnesota?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think there were a lot of great people in LA, but I know what you mean. The difference here is that what I have been noticing is there's still like the jerky drivers. It's just they're not in a sports car anymore. They're in like a giant truck, like a really nice, massive truck.
Yes.
Yeah.
That could take you out like in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And you have kids in the car.
Yeah, that's the person who tried to cut me off this morning. Yep.
Yeah. You want to avoid that at all costs. Don't engage. So I think this video is an excellent example of people just in their day-to-day lives out doing their stuff, running their errands, who just find the opportunity to be kind and help somebody out. So we're giving you a little preview here. My very favorite one that makes me cry is the woman who gets the flowers. She has to like use her sleeve to wipe her tears away. It's the sweetest thing. And it's a really good Valentine's Day idea actually as well. But if you want to see the full video, make sure you click on the notes in the show link. There's a link in the show notes. So if you want to see the full video, there's a link in the show notes and you can check it out there. Great. All right, Courtney, this is everybody. This is Courtney's on a lighter note, her idea. Fabulous thought. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. See you guys next time.
If you liked what you heard, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really liked what you heard, please leave us a rating and a review. Know It All is a production of Peggy Bunker Media. Editing, producing, and recording is done by the team at Resonate Recordings. I'm Peggy Bunker, and now you know it all.